to another unique NUFC podcast edition with myself, Geordie Pete Redding, and of course my co-host, the super Ali Khaled, who's sports editor of Arab News. Ali, how are you?
I'm very well, Pete. How are you doing?
Very good, very good. Let's get straight down to business. Another fantastic week on the pitch. It was just a very much needed pick-me-up. A great 3 points, nonetheless, against a Wolves side who didn't really test Newcastle, but you would have taken that 3 points beforehand looking at that fixture.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've been looking at this fixture over the last few weeks as well, because Newcastle had that run of away matches, which ended up being 3 defeats, and the last being the 5-1 against Tottenham, which was quite painful, I think, for a lot of fans, and a bit of a reality check for everyone, saying, right, this is where we are. But we also did say, like, it's not the time to panic. Tottenham are playing very well, and even before the match, we said it's a good chance this could be, maybe a bridge too far for Newcastle, and then it proved like that. Tottenham were very good that day, but we did say it's not the time to panic, and Eddie Howe did not panic. We looked at the 3 games coming up, Wolves, which was one of them, the home games, and straight away back with a win. I think there was a great atmosphere again at the stadium, pre-match.
Amazing.
And as I think like the fans are playing a big part in the revival, like we've mentioned this week in, week out. And again, it was a good, solid performance. And for Chris Wood to get a goal again, maybe a bit of a bonus as well, because we've been talking about how he struggled. So this will be good for his confidence. 10 points now between Newcastle and the relegation zone. And on 34 points, it's looking very good. You can keep talking about mathematics and what could happen, but I think it's almost there, almost.
I have to say 2 special mentions. One to Chris Wood, because yes, he plugged away, and we've said that goals have been a bit of an issue at the club in general. But fair play to him, Ali, because he stood up and he picked. No one else was taking that penalty, and he absolutely rammed it home very, very confidently. And I think Eddie Howe was really pleased. But also for me, Bruno G playing was a different level to what was on that pitch. And of course, his first home start, absolutely incredible performance, not just from a distribution point of view, Ali, but the fact he's a grafter as well. He, like we said this on previous shows, he's not just your typical silky skilled Brazilian. He gets stuck in.
Absolutely, and I don't think he would have been he would have been signed or being anywhere near an Eddie Howe team if he wasn't a grafter and wasn't a hard worker. And none of this stereotypical skillful player who's there for the money or doesn't fancy it and all that. This is a proper player. And when we've seen it, it's funny how. It's a bit ironic, actually, like that, the Newcastle's fantastic run, was achieved mostly without him, you could say, and then, as he started coming into the team, there was that tough run, but again, it shows, Eddie Howe, how, he's quite, single-minded. He knows his tactics. He knows what team he wants to play. When the team was doing well, Bruno wasn't coming in because it wasn't fair to drop other players. And he said it, a few times. He said, "These are the players that are serving me well. I'm not going to take them out of the team at the moment." Obviously after the 3 defeats and all that, and it was time, I think, for Bruno to start. And what a game he had. What a game. And again, just going forward now, you can see that this could be a player you build the team around.
Before we meet today's guest, a guest I'm absolutely buzzing about because he was a hero of mine who knows exactly what you're talking about, Ali, what it is to graft for the Newcastle United team. And I'm sure that will come up in the interview. But I wanted just to mention a couple of other names. One that already is wearing the black and white shirt is Matt Targett. Now, according to press reports, that deal has been done, that Aston Villa have accepted a 15 million or thereabouts deal. Again, Matt Targett had another superb game against Wolverhampton Wanderers. A great signing for me. And another name that's cropped up this week in the press, which would be a great addition to that midfield, if of course it's true, because we are linked with everyone, but Christian Eriksen, who would be out of his short-term contract come June at Brentford. First of all, Matt Targett, well-deserved.
Absolutely. I mean, I know you're a big fan of his, Pete, and as we all are. We've of the 5 signings, perhaps he was, the least sort of high profile of those signings. Especially, we weren't
Correct.
sure, is this going to be a long term, stay, a long-term signing, and he's ended up being one of the shrewdest signings of the January for any club, really. I remember before that we were talking about where does this team needs strengthening, and we were saying, right, we need a midfielder, you need like more goals up front, which in a way I think the goal issue up front has not been fixed as much, but the defense issues have been fixed. Dan Burn came in, obviously, and that was made a bit of noise, that because obviously like it weakened Burnley, as everyone was saying. But I think Target has been quietly came in and probably been the most consistent of all the signings.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. And Eriksen, thoughts on him in a black and white top?
Eriksen, listen, we all love Christian Eriksen. I think there was the major incident in the summer, but and we were all not in the summer, sorry, in the Euros, and we were all, obviously, everyone was shocked and worried and all that. And we must have thought his career probably was over. But he's come back, but not only come back and been excellent. He's been, playing for his country as well. He's scored a few goals. And just remember when he was playing for Tottenham, he was one of the best players in the league, and
instrumental.
And absolutely brilliant for Tottenham and for Inter Milan. When he went to Internazionale, he didn't really start off like so well, but ultimately they won the league with him. So I think to have a player of that caliber again, like just cast your mind back a year ago, and you've said like, right, we will have Eriksen and Bruno Guimaraes running the midfield. You probably wouldn't have you wouldn't have thought that's possible. So absolutely, I think that would be a wonderful signing and bring in that creativity that I think is the next step for Eddie Howe. We're just talking about like goals, still a little bit, totally still agree. A bit lacking, And look, we know Newcastle have relied on Alan Saint-Maximin quite a lot for creativity. I could see someone like Eriksen being more of an Eddie Howe type player.
And of course, no shock in Brentford's recent upturn in form. Brentford as well. So, it coincides with the introduction of Eriksen. So I have to give massive kudos to Thomas Frank's Brentford for doing that. And first and foremost, for giving Eriksen a chance to be back in the game. But wow, has it benefited Brentford?
Absolutely, and it was not a sentimental decision. It was a football decision. No. I think when we heard he's coming back into football, there is a lot. Quite rightly, there was a lot of emotion and saying fantastic to see him back and all that. But this is not a charity appointment, like signing or anything. It's not an emotional decision. He's come in and he's done a fantastic job. And Brentford safe, playing very well.
Safe being the operative word. Okay. It's time to meet today's legendary guest. No stranger to the lights of St James's Park, having made well over 100 appearances and left a lasting memory at Gallowgate. Welcome to Black and White with Arab News, Gavin Peacock. Gavin, how are you?
I'm very well, thanks, Pete. Good to be on the show.
Great to have you. Let's get straight into it and take stock of a remarkable transition at your old club. Eddie Howe, once of Bournemouth, like yourself, he just seems to understand the NUFC project like you did. Could he be a similar icon in the mould of Keegan, do you think, Gavin?
Yeah, I actually said this when he arrived, Pete, that, there was a similar situation brewing when I was at the club and with the takeover of Sir John Hall, and then obviously Keegan coming in to the situation now with the takeover and then Eddie coming in. Different characters, different personalities, but obviously Kevin had played for the club as well and knew what it meant to the fans and got the club. But Eddie, coming from down south, coming from Bournemouth, and like myself, he gets the club. And obviously he's a good manager as well. Obviously he's got a good track record. But nevertheless, he's coming into a team like when Keegan came in, that are fighting against relegation. First thing he needs to do is keep Newcastle up, because you might be the richest club in the world, but you have a club that's been losing week in, week out, and that's a habit that needs to be broken. Stay up and then take off. And that's what Kevin said to us. He said, we will survive. He made us believe this. He said, and then we will take off. And that's what I'm hoping that Eddie will be able to do. It looks like with with a win there against Wolves, that just creeping towards that safety amount of points.
It's funny you say that, but it would be a very Newcastle thing to be the richest club in the world and plying their trade in the Championship.
Oh, don't say that.
No. Listen, Gavin, it was always in the stars that you would sign for the Toon, given your grandfather's Northeast presence. And I have to say, doing my research, I think your granddad absolutely nails the thought process of playing for NUFC. Leave nothing behind on the pitch. And you certainly you heeded your grandfather's advice, didn't you?
Yeah, my granddad, Tom, my nan, Lydia, born in South Shields. My granddad was a Newcastle fan from a boy, watched in the days of Milburn and Gallagher, Hughie Gallagher. And actually, even though after the Second World War, he was in the Royal Navy, they moved down south looking for work. And that's where my dad was born. My dad became a professional footballer for Cheltenham Athletic for 17 years. With the Geordie roots, my first ever kit, really, in all seriousness, was a Newcastle kit. And so we would go back to the Northeast for holidays, and I'd play with my cousins on the heath. And I got a photo of me with my cousins, and I'm in the front, like a little team photo. I'm in the front like a mini captain of Newcastle. And who'd have known that, 15 years later, I would actually captain the team. So when I signed for Newcastle, my granddad was, my dad was pleased, but my granddad was just like, he's dead now. And it was like, he could die a happy man. And he did say to me, he said, if you sweat blood for their team, he said, those fans would forgive you many mistakes on the field, because if they could put that shirt on, they would do the same. And I never forgot that. And as you say, I left it all out on the field. And yes, you have to have talent, of course, but the fans have got to know you care. They got to know that you just sweat blood for the team. And if that's the case, and you've got 11 players doing that, you got a chance at any club. But with the Newcastle fans, they'll cheer you to the end. They'll support you to the end, and that's worth something.
And it's funny you say that, because you were lucky in both respects, Gavin, as far as speaking from a fan's perspective, that you did have that talent, but you also had that understanding. So you had it both, because there were players, and I won't name them, but there were players who became great heroes at Gallagher, even though they didn't have that amount of that some did, but they had the heart. And I think that as real football fans, the Toon fans always understood that. So it's an interesting point that you make, but you certainly had both. I want to take you back to a season in particular, and it was something that probably started the journey for me as a fan to wake up and say, do you know what? I think Newcastle are actually going places, and I felt the excitement for the first time as a fan. And it was the season Newcastle won the First Division, and there was a very early game away at Derby County, who were promotion favourites. And the season before, we'd been battered 4-1, and I think we had about 7 or 8 players sent off.
Yeah.
So we were back at Derby County. You scored first, and we won 2-1. Now, even though it was only the third game, Gavin, the fans knew something special was happening. They were singing, "We're going to win the league." And it was the third game of the season. And as you said, who would know? But they did. Did the players feel something special was happening that season?
Yeah, definitely. And I remember that derby. I think I scored a header.
Yeah, you did, yeah.
My Parpo's header. And it's very weird, because what Kevin would do is he would spend extra time with me and anyone else who wanted to do finishing after training, and give us his expert advice, And that particular week before training, because he was a little guy like myself, but really good in the air, scored a lot of goals in the air.
Mighty Mouse.
Mighty Mouse. So he said, let's work on some headers. So he was crossing balls in, and I'm springing up and heading them. And it was a Kevin Keegan-like header that I scored in that game. But you're right. I think the fans began to see something special in the team. And maybe even, like you say, Pete, from the season before at Derby, which was such a contrast, that it was a memorable game, because we had players sent off left, right, and centre, and we were trying to battle away to stay up. But now seeing the team go back just a few months later, because it was right towards the beginning of the season, they start to see a team that could do something. And Kevin Keegan had said to us, he says, when you're struggling, he said, every game feels heavy that you're coming up to. He said, when you're playing well, you can't wait for the next game. It's like you recover quicker, you feel energetic, and it was beginning to show in the team, even at the early stages. And we were taking a ton of fans everywhere we went. And the Geordie fans were out singing in the home crowd, 5,000-6,000 of Geordie fans in the stadium. It almost felt like we were playing at home at times, even away.
We spoke with Kevin Keegan a few months back, and I pinpointed that Derby County game because it reminded me of you. I pinpointed Peterborough away for Kevin Keegan, and I think Newcastle had 7,500 in the ground, and another 6,000 outside.
That's right, and I think it was half the. It might have been almost half the attendance. It was crazy.
It was crazy. Yeah. But again, just the difference in football, Gavin, of a similar fixture, not too far apart. That Derby County day will live in the memory of me, because it was a harsh one to take with the refereeing performance. I wouldn't like to stick on that subject, but the fans again were magnificent that day. And
yes.
and then literally fast forward a couple of months later, and with those memories fresh in, going to the game as a supporter, and then having that was fantastic. A really special season. Your most prolific goals return in your career came at Newcastle. Do you have a favourite that you can share with us? And I know there was plenty.
Yeah, I was in my first goal I scored for Newcastle was Plymouth away, and it was a winning goal. So that was memorable. But in terms of the best goal I scored, it was Swindon Town at home, the season before we got promotion, actually. And I always say, if that goal had been like in the Premier League, it would have been a goal of the season, be shown time and again. It was a ball. We were up for a set piece. The ball got cleared out of the box to the halfway line. And as we were all coming out of the box, Kevin Scott, our centre half volleyed it back in. And it comes over my head and I'm on the edge of the box here. So I'm on the half turn. It comes over my head. I caught it on my right foot in one movement, flicked it onto my left thigh, and in one movement, popped it back to the right foot again and volleyed it over the top of Fraser Digby into the top corner. It was the purest goal I think I've scored, and the most difficult tariff of skill. I mean, you practice stuff in training, but that was a moment in my career where I said, of all the goals I've scored, that is the best one for me.
Remember it well, because we always seem to be locking horns with Swindon around that period, who themselves played great football. I can remember.
Well, Glenn Hoddle was the player manager, and Glenn played that day, and then of course, a couple of years later, ended up signing me for Chelsea.
Absolutely, and what a sight that was as well.
Oh yeah, it was good. I mean, it was funny, Pete, but Kevin Keegan had said to me, we were playing against Swindon, and Hoddle's player manager is about 34, 35. He said, look, I want you to go and basically mark Hoddle. He's a sweeper, yeah? So you're playing up there anyway. Stand on Hoddle. You don't let him get the ball, but when you get it, you're going to be able to go past him easy because he's slow. Well, I couldn't get near him. I just thought, I could not get near Hoddle because every time I looked away, Hoddle would drift the other way. He's such a brilliant football mind. So that's another memory of that game as well. But at least I scored a goal.
Brilliant. I mean, just to say, that's every fan's dream to be able to line up on the same pitch as the likes of Glenn Hoddle. Speaking of dreams as well, there's if I had been a player, what would I do after I retired to keep the memory going on? I'd probably have an autobiography out, but probably not one as interesting as you. You've got your autobiography out. Tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, it's called A Greater Glory, and it's basically it's a story of my life, how I became a professional footballer, then a pundit on BBC Match of the Day for a few years, and now I'm actually a pastor in the church. So it's a greater glory from pitch to pulpit, and it's just it is but more than that, it's a story of life in all of its complexities, set against the backdrop of the beautiful game, but with the light of my faith upon it. And so I deal with some deep issues of life and suffering and winning, losing, starting again in life, all of these things that everybody experiences. And yet it's woven into the whole life of being a footballer and a pundit, and then how I've moved into this vocation now. So I think people can relate to it at many different levels, and so they've told me in the feedback so far.
Again, life, football and life, it's a very similar journey, winning and losing, highs and lows. So absolutely. And where can we get a hold of this?
It's available on Amazon.
Okay.
So yeah, A Greater Glory, from pitch to pulpit.
And we'll be sharing that for our viewers as well. Listen, it's been a phenomenal catching up with you, a hero of mine at that time. So fantastic. And I know I speak for many Newcastle United fans when I say what a great period it was. And you played more than your part in shaping the next Newcastle United. All that we ask is that you come on and visit us again soon and chat with us. And hopefully we can talk about maybe challenging for a major title.
Well, that would be fantastic. My great hope for Newcastle is that, stay up this season. I think we'll do it. The 3 points against Wolves was good. Chris Woods looks good. The manager is sound. And then with the back in now that we've got, and I think the new owners really do, they kind of get the club, right, as well. That's Absolutely. The other thing. And who knows? And I'd love to be talking about trophies and this, that, and the other with you for Newcastle United, because the fans deserve it. Yes, for sure.
Absolutely brilliant. The one and only, the legendary Gavin Peacock. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Pete.
Okay, that's almost it from us. But before we do, it's the last word as always. And we've saved a little bit of a preview for our last word with Ali Khaled. Ali, a massive game at the weekend, Newcastle, Leicester at home. And Leicester will have had their exertions from their European jaunt also. So again, is it another great opportunity, a home game for 3 points?
Yeah, I mean, I think, with every game, in recent months, with all the wins that Newcastle have, with every game that takes you further away from the relegation zone, the pressure becomes less and less. I think the win against Wolves means that even less pressure on it. I mean, I'm sure Eddie Howe will not think of it that way. He's not going to say, "All right, lads, the pressure's off. Go out and enjoy yourselves." I don't think it's that stage yet. But
which they were accused of at Spurs, by the way.
Yeah. I mean, exactly. It's
Big Sam was very vocal about that, and I don't think Eddie was too pleased at the comments.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the suggestion that the players thought the job was done. Eddie Howe will not allow that. But they are humans. And they will look at that table and think, well, we're almost there. So I think they'll play with a bit of confidence. Especially after the Wolves game. I can see another win. And. Honestly, it's incredible. Leicester are in 9th position on 40 points. Nice and safe. But if Newcastle beat them, they're only 3 points behind them.
Amazing.
I mean,
incredible stat.
I mean, again, think of that earlier in the season when people were still talking about Leicester, potentially for top 4 or like European football. And Newcastle will say, well, it's done. Nobody ever recovers from this. And now, if you a match that's very winnable, if you beat them, you're only 3 points behind with a few games left in the season. Start to look at mid-table even, or top 10. I mean, obviously top 10 is a bit of a push, but that's how different the situation is. And as for the other clubs around, Everton and Leeds are not playing this weekend.
Nope.
Because of the FA Cup, and really, we keep talking about Burnley being the focus. They lost to Norwich in the last game, which was and obviously coupled with Manchester United's loss or failure to beat Everton was a terrible weekend for Burnley. And now they go away to West Ham, which I don't think they'll get any points out of.
No, because West Ham will be angry. They haven't been brilliant recently. I have to say, Norwich City, when I watched Norwich last weekend, Ali, I thought I was watching Brazil. I've only tuned into Norwich a couple of times, and the game they play. But again, speaking to pros and friends this week, it's goals for them. They play great football, but they don't have goals in them, and that's what's been the struggle. But they looked really, really good. A whisper of the great escape for Norwich. Could it possibly be on for them?
Oof, I mean, the performance was very good. Obviously, and a fantastic result against a team that is in the relegation zone with them. I think the problem for Norwich is that it's a little bit too little, too late, because it's not really Burnley, you need to go above. It's Burnley and whoever is above Burnley.
And
and that's where the problem is, and I don't think that's going to happen.
You've said, but I'm going to put you on the spot because I know you love it. Last word, definite last word. You fancy Newcastle? Give us a score, Ali.
I think it's going to be Newcastle 2, Leicester 1.
Okay, you've been pretty good at that, literally, of late. So we keep our fingers crossed for that. Massive thanks to our guest today, Gavin Peacock. Absolutely brilliant to catch up with him. Thanks always to Ali Khaled. We will be back next week on the next edition of Black and White with Arab News. For now, how are the lads?